Hey guys, King of Charmanders here. Today I bring to you the best blast guide. Is Teostra Blastpowder meta? This video is the complete guide for the blast element. Blast was first introduced to Monster Hunter Now by the Elder Dragon Teostra and its weapons. We will also be reviewing the Teostra Blastpowder skill and how well it pairs with Blast. First, we're going to start off with how Blast element works. So Blast does not do elemental damage like fire, water, ice, thunder, and dragon. Blast is a status element like poison, paralysis, and sleep. So it's not going to do damage. It doesn't stack with damage when you make it higher. No, it's a status element. And status elements inflict status buildup. When you build up enough status element against a monster, it will inflict a status. A previous update made it harder to proc the next status infliction after a successful status infliction. Here's an example if that's too difficult for you. After you do one blast, the second blast will be harder to proc. This was to balance the game because everybody was making poor monsters literally paralyzed to death consistently and it never even got a shot on you. Now given this is different for all 4 players if you're in a group, but it's still as it holds. If you inflict it once with blast, the second one's still going to be harder, making it difficult as you keep getting blast procced over time. So, in a nutshell, in summary, blast is a status element, and after every blast, it's going to be harder to proc. Now that you know blast is a status element, here's what blast element does. When you inflict blast on a monster, it will do fixed damage to the monster. Blast damage does approximately 5% of the monster's total HP each time it procs. Again, it does fixed damage and it's approximately 5% of the monster's total HP. Here's 2 examples I'm going to show you right here. Example number 1, we have a 6-star Deviljho. And 6-star Deviljho has 17,400 total HP and blast does 871 to it. So if you do the math, 871 divided by 17,400, it equals 0.05005747,126. If you round this up, this is 5%. So if you round it up, it's going to be 5%. And we have example number 2, where we have a 7-star Pukei-Pukei, which has 16,740 total HP, and blast does 836 damage to it. If we do the math, 836 divided by 16,740 equals 4.994026. I'm not even going to go through the rest of it, you get the point. But if you round this up, this is 5%. And now we move on to the Teostra Blastpowder skill and its information. So Teostra Blastpowder is the exclusive Elder Dragon skill of the Teostra armor. This skill also maxes out at level 3. And we're going to go over all 3 levels, so level 1, level 2, and level 3. First we have level 1. Makes it easier to rid yourself of Blast Blight and slightly easier to inflict blast buildup on monsters. At level 2, it makes it easier to rid yourself of Blast Blight and moderately easier to inflict blast buildup on monsters. And last, at level 3, it makes it easier to rid yourself of Blast Blight and significantly easier to inflict blast buildup on monsters. So each level makes it easier, and we're going to test each level in this video. But before we perform these tests, first I gotta show you the loadout. So here's the Teostra Blastpowder test loadout. And for this video, we will test blast using the strongest blast weapon in the game, the Teostra Bow. And the Teostra Bow is a super weapon that fires rapid level 4 at charge level 3 at 2 blinks. What do I define as super weapon? Something that's extremely powerful and has a unique mechanic that makes it better than a lot of other weapons. In this case, it is the rapid level 4 at charge level 3 again. In addition, bows are the best status buildup weapon in the Teostra set because it does the most hits out of all the Teostra weapons. In a nutshell, here's how status infliction works. More hits equals more status buildup. The slower your weapon attacks, the slower you attack, the less status buildup you do. So the faster you attack, that's why everyone's like, but what about the Teostra dual blades? Well, it's a dual element, and if those things had blast, the dual blades would be too OP because it would attack super fast. You would have the damage and DPS for your hits, and you would build up status buildup like no tomorrow. So before we get status dual blades, they have to figure out how to balance it. And again, we will be testing Teostra Blastpowder at all levels. So we're going to look at every level 1, 2, and 3. And here are the tests, starting out with Teostra Blastpowder level 3 versus 6-star Deviljho. Our weapon is going to be the Teostra Bow at grade 6.1, with our build being Teostra Blastpowder level 3 and Focus level 4. In this entire battle, if you pay attention, we perform 5 blasts in this battle. So proccing blasts 5 times, you times that by 5%, we do 25% of this Deviljho's HP. And for the rest of the damage, our raw damage accounts for 75% of Deviljho's total damage. And our completion time is 1 minute and 7 seconds. So Teostra Blastpowder level 3 allowed Blast to proc a lot. 5 times is a lot. And thankfully, even though we only had Focus level 4, because ideally you want 5, but Focus level 4 still did a lot of work, even though it lowered the attack speed of the Teostra Bow. Some people are like, okay, Focus 4 and level 3. Well, here's the thing. The less attack speed you do, the less damage you're going to do overall. So it was really cool to see that despite having Focus level 4, it still did 5 blasts, which means level 3 is still really good, and level 3 is something you should consider using if you have 3 pieces of Teostra armor. Up next, we have the Teostra Blastpowder level 2 test versus 7-star Pukei-Pukei. Our weapon is a Teostra Bow at grade 6.1, and the build is Teostra Blastpowder at level 2. This time, however, we are using Focus level 5. If you pay attention for this battle, we perform 5 blasts in this battle. Multiply that by 5%, and we did 25% of this Pukei-Pukei's total HP for this battle just using Blast. And for the rest of the damage, it accounted as raw damage, so 75% of our damage to this Pukei-Pukei was raw. Our completion time was 51 seconds. And Teostra Blastpowder level 2 still allowed 5 blasts to proc in comparison to Teostra Blastpowder level 3. And with Focus level 5 maxed out, at level 5 it allowed faster attacks, which allowed faster blast buildup and more raw damage. So level 2 still worked out really well, so if you're a bow main, you might want to consider using level 2 instead of level 3. And now all that's left is level 1. So here we have Teostra Blastpowder level 1 test versus an 8-star Kulu-Ya-Ku. Our weapon is a Teostra Bow at grade 6.1. Our build is to Teostra Blastpowder at level 1 and Focus level 5. In this battle, we are able to proc 5 blasts. Multiply that by 5%, and that is 25%. While for the rest of the damage, it's 75%, and that's coming from our raw damage. Our completion time for this hunt was 1 minute and 15 seconds. So Teostra Blastpowder level 1 was really slow to proc blast compared to level 2 and 3. And I think the only reason we were able to proc 5 of them was the fact that we were up against a 5-star Kulu-Ya-Ku. If it was anything weaker, we probably would have just mauled this thing with our raw damage versus relying on blast. In fact, near the end of the battle, you're going to see the 5th blast barely proc, but it didn't really matter because Kulu-Ya-Ku was pretty much almost dead. Now again, given this test was against an 8-star monster, however, it provided good data to see how good one level of Teostra Blastpowder would do. And it did okay, but it's pretty clear that in comparison to level 1, 2, or 3, the sweet spot for Teostra Blastpowder is level 2 or level 3 depending on what weapon you are using. However, there are blast weak monsters. So here's a blast weakness test versus 8-star grade Jagras. My weapon will be the Teostra Bow at grade 6.1, with my build being Teostra Blastpowder at level 2 with Focus level 5. In this battle, we get 7 blasts off, and 7 blasts multiplied by 5% is 35%, while the rest of our damage is 65% from the raw damage values. And our completion time is 1 minute and 15 seconds. As we see per this test, Blast is able to proc more and faster versus blast weak monsters. It was pretty obvious right here, literally every volley and every quick shot I was blasting, literally just blasting. I was also trying to break the forelegs for a better Wyvern Gem Shard chance, so it was just a test to see like, hey, how can I accurately get it on this grade Jagras? And as you see, it wasn't great. So my damage pretty much fell off, which explains the higher completion time. but I was also trying to force more blast procs. I wasn't trying to hit Jagras' weak spots so that I could try to force more blasts, and literally I think at the last second or like I still couldn't do it, so I was just, you know, I'm gonna ult and then try to finish this thing off, and here we are able to do that. 7 is my lucky number, and 7 blasts are a lot, so blast does relatively well against blast weak monsters. And moving on, we have status sneak attack level 5 tests versus 6-star Kulu-Ya-Ku. So what's the meta for melee? It's status sneak attack level 5 when it comes to status infliction. But is it nowadays? So we're going to try it. Here we have the Teostra Charge Blade at 6.1, and our build is status sneak attack level 5 with weakness exploit level 2 thanks to the Pukei-Pukei helmet. With status sneak attack 5, we are able to proc 6 blasts in this battle. 6 blasts multiplied by 5% is 30% damage. So the rest of our damage came from our raw damage, which was 70%, with our completion time being 1 minute and 13 seconds. So surprisingly, status sneak attack level 5 was able to proc blast 6 times. Status sneak attack level 5 though requires 1 more armor slot for a total of 4 armor pieces required, while Teostra Blastpowder level 3 only needs 3 pieces. So that's a thing to keep in mind. Also, you need the light shade Paolumu Greaves, which as of this time of this video hasn't came out again since the paid ticket event. But this just shows that status sneak attack 5 is still pretty dang good if you don't want to invest in the Teostra pieces to get Teostra Blastpowder level 3. Status sneak attack level 5 is also the meta for all the other elements as long as you're attacking the monster from behind to build up status element. And for our final test, we have status sneak attack level 5 test versus the 6-star Banbaro. The reason I'm doing this is because Banbaro is weak to blast. So for our weapon, we have Teostra Charge Blade at grade 6.1, and our build is status sneak attack level 5, with weakness exploit level 2 and lock on thanks to the Pukei-Pukei helmet. We are able to proc blast 5 times in this battle, and 5 blast procs, you multiply that by 5%, that's 25%. Which means for the rest of the damage, it comes from your raw damage, which was 75% of this hunt, with our completion time being 1 minute and 2 seconds. So status sneak attack level 5 was able to proc blast 5 times, so it was pretty good versus a blast weak monster, despite the fact that I had this thing try to run me over like a semi-truck, and it was really annoying. Banbaro does, however, have relatively low HP. So when you compare it to other monsters, Banbaro's HP is pretty dang low, which is why we were able to kill it so fast. But this was still impressive, at status sneak attack level 5 was able to proc so much. I think 5 procs was pretty good for a squishy monster like Banbaro. And now finally, here's our verdict. The overall blast analysis. Is it meta? So blast does 5% fixed damage, so it's not bad overall. However, it's a far cry from being overpowered or better than pure elemental damage. Having studied blast potential beforehand, I already knew blast wasn't going to be overpowered before it released. So for everyone that was out there, I was like, oh my god, is blast meta? Oh my god, clickbait! Blast is going to be so powerful! No, it's not. The problem with blast is it's a status element. You have to attack a certain times and build up in order for blast to proc. If it was too much, it'd be too overpowered, and it would just create a lot of fear of missing out or FOMO, especially with the way blast is right now, and I'll get to that later in this video. But yeah, it's not overpowered, it doesn't overtake elements, you should be going after element first in elemental sets, rather than stressing about blast, because blast, it's okay. And based off of our tests, most of your damage will still come from raw damage. As you upgrade your weapons, your raw damage gets higher, which means less blast overall. Most of your damage, per our tests, will still come from your raw element even at lower levels, so imagine that at higher levels. Therefore, blast is not meta. It can have a lot of use down the line, but it's not a must-have or something that's broken. Hopefully this video helps you with the blast element. Blast might be good in the future, but overall it's just a fun element to use. In addition, the only monster that has blast of this video is Teostra. And keep in mind, Elder Dragon weapons are really hard and expensive to build and max out, because it's an Elder Dragon. As someone with a 10-5 Elder Dragon weapon, unlike some other people, I will give you advice as to why it's so hard, because I can tell you on how much money and time I've spent on this thing, it's so hard. I think the lowest I've seen is like a little over 100 for someone to get a 10-5 Elder Dragon weapon. For me, it took 150 kills. So 150 plus Kushala Dior kills to 10-5 my Kushala bow. So it's only natural to see that, unless I get really lucky, that it's still going to be the same result. So that's a lot of money and a lot of time. So keep that in mind. With that being said, please do me a huge favor. Like, subscribe, and comment for the YouTube algorithm. Good luck on your grinds. Hopefully, if you can build a blast element, at least you're having fun with it. So go ahead, build what you gotta build. Hopefully your Teostra drops are doing great and the rest of your hunts are doing great. Good luck on your grinds, and I will see y'all on the next video.